This is going to be a fun one because in this video we're going to have a look at the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. They are very similar and I'm going to let you know what I think about the design from the front, side and the rear, and also have a look at the interior, and then of course let you know which one I would buy. So both of these, they started at around $40,000 and both ride on the same modular platform and can be equipped with the same 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, and both offer level 3 DC fast charging. The EV's sleeker design over the Ioniq 5, it gives it a bit of an advantage when it comes to range at 310 miles for the EV6 versus 303 for the Ioniq 5. Now let's have a look at these designs here, and I can't say this too many times, but I don't know how much fun you can have as a car designer, but they are definitely having a lot of fun in South Korea right now. So have a look. Let's start with the Ioniq 5 up here. As I said, we're gonna have a look at the front, side, rear and the interior. I think the interior is a very important part in this comparison because they look very different, but it feels like overall the Hyundai, when they decided when they designed the Ioniq 5, they looked backwards for some retro inspired styling. And we don't really have, looking at the lines here, it doesn't really feel like an EV when you look at the proportions and the hood and where the A-pillar dips into the body. It looks, to me, this design looks like almost like an homage to the original Giugiaro Golf GTI in a very, very modern take with these angles that we have in the front end. And I love the way this goes down to kind of like a beak in the front end with the design, with the graphics and the chamfer that houses these digitalized pixelated lights that we have all over the front end of the Ioniq. I really love this design, and I hope I can get my hands on an Ioniq 5 soon so I can compare it to the EV6 that I currently have to test right now. So as you can see, it's very different philosophy from what the Kia is doing. The Kia, on the other hand, if the Ioniq and Hyundai are looking back, Kia is looking forward to the future. The differences here, specifically in a side view, are the proportions of these things. The EV6, you can definitely tell that this is an EV just by looking at these proportions and how steep the front end dips into these gorgeous headlights and the new tiger nose design that we have, with the lights now being part of the tiger nose itself, creating this very distinct Kia front end. This is the GT version. As you can see, we have more angular front and lower graphics than we have in the normal looking EV6, and I'm definitely a fan of the GT design over the normal one that has almost like just a intake that goes something like this in a kind of weird curvature that doesn't really have too much confidence in it. But this design has a lot more confidence and it knows exactly what it wants to be when you look at it from a front view. So now let's look at the side, and this is where you can definitely tell these apart when it comes to the proportions. Just have a look at this gorgeous looking Ioniq 5, and with the typical Golf proportions of this thing, which is super interesting. I feel like this might as well have been a great Volkswagen if they decided to come out with this as an EV. Just have a look at this, for example, the C-pillar, a very important design feature and graphic feature of every single Golf generation, to have that be in this specific angle that we have right here, and also in this specific thickness. So it feels like they definitely took a lot of inspiration from the Golf when they were designing this car. And then we have this cut in the body lines. You have this forward arrow which creates a forward movement moving this way, and I also like that it's situated, the intersection is situated so far ahead compared to, for example, the Elantra, where it sits a little further back and doesn't really give the same dynamic movements in the graphics design because it feels more like it's centered on other Hyundais. But here they really stretched it forward all the way to this point, creating a nice sweeping line in the body that kind of pulls all the graphic forward. I really like that design, and I also like this lower part. So this is considered to be an SUV. I feel like everything is considered to be an SUV these days, even though it clearly doesn't look like an SUV. Maybe it's just me, but this to me looks like a hatchback. But when you see the Ioniq 5 in real life, you notice just how much bigger it actually is in real life when compared to videos and images. I was kind of surprised when I saw the Ioniq 5, and it weighs 2.3 tons or something like that, so it's not really a lightweight machine. I also like these wheel fenders that have these kind of almost dirt splash design on them. A cool little detail here as well. And I'm not really a huge fan of these wheels, but they look pretty good. They don't really fill out the wheelhouses the way I want. I think this gap is just a tiny bit too big for my taste, but you know me, I like big wheels. I like them to fill out the wheelhouses. This is probably very good for drivability and comfort. Looking at the EV6 in the side view, here you can definitely compare the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. You have a clear proportions of an EV right here and a lot softer design. However, this corner up here feels like a Nissan GT-R roof line, and the greenhouse itself, specifically in this corner with this tight corner up there, while the rest of the graphics sit pretty smooth and soft. And then we have this. So we have, if I draw a line from the rear going into the front end, it flows very naturally all the way to the front end, where it dips so hard right here. I feel like I've said this in the in my review video of the EV6 design on my third channel, when I have it in real life and show you the angles, that this still feels like it's dipping way too fast, and I want to stretch it out a tiny bit, a couple of inches forward, to have more of a natural continuation of the shoulder line. But it still looks like a very, very cool design, definitely a unique design, and we have this graphic stretching out the length of the car, going up into the ducktail right here. Beautifully done and very unique, as I said, and everything that is unique I'm a fan of. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. I think as long as designers are innovating their style and their graphic design, I'm always going to be a fan of progression when it comes to car design. I think Kia is doing a great job with that in this design. The wheels, I actually like these wheels a lot better than the 19-inch that you get on the rear-wheel drive, for example. These look great. I would like to have them a little bit less aggressive in the styling, so I don't like these 90-degree corners that we have right here. I would like to have a little subtler designs when it comes to the wheels, but I think these wheels over the Ioniq 5, these look pretty cool as well, very unique wheels, but in this case I'm gonna go for the EV6 wheels. Now let's have a look at the rear view before we jump into the interior, and this is also where the Ioniq 5 really shines, in my opinion. I love the lower part of the graphics. We have this 80s style Nintendo 8-bit graphics right here. This reminds me of the console, the Nintendo 8-bit, where you have the vent slots, or just regular 80s product design in combination with something that we've never seen before. So very pixelated graphics in the taillights. These two elements, they come from 50 years apart, and that's what I love about the Ioniq 5. It mixes everything together, and it comes together in this very cool, unique design with graphics stretching 50 years, half a century, and it comes together so well. We have a lot of angles here. As you can see, this angle looks good from this three-quarter rear view as well, and it just looks like it's planted properly on the ground. And I love that they decided to go with a proper hatchback looking design, so none of these sportback designs that are hatchbacks, but this looks like a retro hatchback reincarnated as a EV. So looking at the EV6 down here, I think both of these rear views, this is the view that I prefer the most of both of these cars. The Kia EV6 just looks incredible from the rear with this graphics. Also, as I said, looking forward, futuristic in contrast to the Hyundai Ioniq. And that's what I think both of these brands do so well. They both have fun. They maybe had a meeting, let's say, the designers or the design department from Kia and the design department from Hyundai just got together. Kia said, okay, we're gonna take the more modern futuristic approach, and you guys have fun with some retro styling. And I think that's kind of what they did here. The EV6 definitely looks a lot more futuristic than the Ioniq 5, but the Ioniq 5 still it doesn't look like anything else. It's a very unique design. It doesn't look like a car that was made in the 80s. It still looks like a proper futuristic EV. And I love both of these cars, as I said, because of the creativity that the designers were allowed to have in designing these cars. And the thing with the Ioniq brand is that they come out with so many different things. The Ioniq 6, the Ioniq 5, they all look very different. And then you have the big Ioniq 7, I think it's gonna be called, which also separates itself from the design of the rest of the Ioniq. So last but not least, let's have a look at the interior before I'm gonna let you know which one I would buy. The interiors are surprisingly different, even though they're kind of built on the same platform, these two cars. We have more of a, this is definitely more product design approach to the angles and the graphic design of the Ioniq 5 up here. You have some clean lines, but this looks a little bit, in my opinion, this looks almost too dated, this section, when you compare the interior and in relation to the exterior. I think the Ioniq doesn't really live up to the exterior design when you step into the driver's seats, specifically with this area right here. This feels a little dated, and also this looks also like it could come out from something from the 90s. So it's an interesting design. It has this long screen, as you can see right here. These are probably the same 12-inch gauge clusters and infotainment system that we have in the EV6. But I think Hyundai could have made the interior of the Ioniq 5 look a little more stylized and elegant and not so clinical. It almost looks like a hospital room or something like that. Looking at the EV6, this is what I really like about the EV6 is the interior. I think this is just a gorgeous interior. Yes, it does have the iPad slapped on here, but we have an angle here, a bit of an angled and stylized outline or framing of the display, but we don't have that same kind of framing that like we have in this almost Apple style display that we have in the Ioniq. So this feels more stylized, it feels more automotive in my opinion. And looking at this surface right here, you can see just how much better the integration of the new styling looks in the EV6. The EV6 feels a lot more modern than the Ioniq 5, and also same goes for this surface right here. This is a beautiful little design piece, which I talked about in my review video of the EV6 and the interior. I just love the way this looks, and the angle of the start button right here, and this little house for the start button as well with this plastic piece that looks like brushed aluminum. It's just a nice little design piece that you can tell that the designers actually had some fun creating and designing and putting some emotion into these design features. Same goes for the center console in general. I definitely prefer the interior of the EV6 over the interior of the Ioniq 5, but I'm gonna wait until I actually sit inside the Ioniq 5 to give my final thoughts on that. So which one of these would I buy? As I said, I think both of these brands are doing just an amazing job bringing in, transforming into the EV era. They're having a lot of fun with their designs at the moment, and they're creating some new styles that weren't going to be able to make if they just kept the same old internal combustion engine layout. And that's why I am a huge fan of EVs. They might all drive very similarly at the moment, but I think that's going to change as well. I think engineers are going to come up with some features to make them stand out when it comes to the drivability and the personality of EVs. But looking at the designs, if I were to pick one of these, I'm gonna have to go with the Ioniq 5, because I just love that they decided to go with a Golf proper hatchback design in combination with some Nintendo 8-bit graphic features combined with these LED pixelated lights that's all over the Ioniq 5. But when it comes to the interior, definitely have to choose the EV6 in this case. So I wish I could have an Ioniq 5 with the EV6 interior, but unfortunately I don't think that's a possibility. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.